So we're going to talk about something tonight that I don't think we've ever really touched on in this show, and that's Doom. Kelly, are you familiar with this Doom game?
I have a passing awareness of Doom by watching
Nice.
Bug Panda, where there are like 8 million Doom videos.
Yeah, it's come up once or twice if you guys haven't picked up on the subtle sarcasm there. But something new happened and everybody's talking about it, and we love Doom, so we would talk about it even if everybody wasn't talking about it. And that's limited run games at QuakeCon made a huge announcement, and this is a big deal for a lot of reasons. So, there's a ton of homebrew games that have been coming out on physical cartridges, which is awesome. And speaking of homebrew games, you guys should check out Slapdash. You can take control of Kelly, run from the cops and guard dogs and things like that while you pound beers. Just a Tuesday for Kelly.
I said the link is in the description to the game, as well as be sure to check out the Bug Panda website with another link for that in the description, where there is now the Bog Panda Vision segment, our new subsidiary, which is where it houses all the various retro gaming activities we're doing, where Slapdash holds a special place of honor. So you can navigate to the website to download it. You can get it from the description, the YouTube video, lots of places.
And so, what makes this announcement a little bit different because not only are there all these homebrew games, but there has been reissues of games and stuff too. But this isn't a reissue. This is actually they've done a remaster the way that the Night Dive has been doing of all the classic games and putting out, but a remaster of a console version of Doom that is getting a physical cartridge release. So people are pretty excited about this because this is a major thing. This is Doom for Super Nintendo, which was a big deal even when it came out. And let's be honest, it's not a good way to play Doom. It wowed people in the sense that it played at all. It was Doom on Super Nintendo, which was, not even up to the specs of the low end PCs that struggled to play Doom. So it was pretty impressive that it could play it. Now, of course, it did use helper chips. I know people have feelings about helper chips and things like that. Personally, I think that's fine. I think you should use whatever tools are at your disposal. I don't think that's a bad thing. But it did use the Super FX chip. It also utilized Mode 7, which is the built-in scaling and rotation for Super Nintendo, the same way that previous attempts at first-person shooters on there, Wolfenstein 3D, and of course, Super Noah's Ark 3D, probably the most important first-person shooter. I think we're all on that same page. And essentially, the way these games work on Super Nintendo, because Super Nintendo had such great tools for scaling and rotation compared to its competitors, even though it had a slower processor. Essentially, there's the only sprites that are on screen are your HUD and your hand and slash weapon. And of course, enemies and things, but your environments are entirely just a background layer. So this is how they circumvented the slower processor. See, Sega had their own first person games with zero tolerance, and on 32X you got Doom and things like that. But they actually worked using raycasting the same way the PC versions did. Scaled down, of course, for the lower end hardware, but it worked the same way, where essentially it's just constantly redrawing the image from the perspective of your character, whereas Super Nintendo couldn't do that. So what it's actually doing is scaling and rotating this background layer so that it gives you the impression that you're moving through it the same way you are on the other ones. But in actuality, it's only redrawing like every so many frames. So it's saving a lot of processing power. The downside of that is these background layers are not as detailed. They're very simplified to the point where, we've posted pictures and things like that. Ammo is 1 pixel on a slightly darker gray pixel on the gray flat surface of the floor. There's no textures at all on the floor or ceiling. There's no textures for the toxic waste and things like that that you have to maneuver around. Everything is very blocky and blurry and simplified, and it doesn't run great. So the downside of that, of the skipping frames, is you don't get a great frame rate as you'd imagine. Also, too, you get stuck a lot on edges of things because instead of you actually redrawing the screen, it's scaling and rotating it around you, essentially stretching the image in front of you. So you get stuck on edges a lot. That does happen in the original Raycast games. Like I was playing PC Doom earlier. It does happen, even on the PC version. Not that much though. I switched over to Super Nintendo Doom so that we could have this talk and I could refresh myself with it. Going to the first room, when you start the first level and you kind of go to the left and you have that stairwell, I got stuck immediately. As soon as I turned around, I got too close to a wall and I wasn't even in a corner. I was just stuck on the wall. So I had to turn completely around and go in the opposite direction to get unstuck from the wall. Unfortunately, that's just what happened. It still wowed people at the time, though, because again, this shouldn't be happening. It's basically magic that it's even working, similar to the way that people get excited to make Doom play on calculators and things like that. It's not playing well, it's just cool that it's playing on something it shouldn't. But now Limited Run Games is releasing a physical, official copy of Doom that is apparently upgraded in every way. The guy who was in charge of the Super Nintendo project is involved in this for the original port of it. He said that they have new chips now that they're calling the Super FX3 chips in the sense of explaining how it's going to work. It's running off of these new Super FX chips, which give it more RAM and more memory. So it should, be able to run faster. It's going to have more detail, more textures, better frame rate. And it's going to, because of the larger size, they're going to be able to put in a lot of the missing content as well. So it should be the full game of Doom.
Yeah, and I'm pretty excited for it. I think, going back to a little bit of the chip conversation, and there are strongly held beliefs on a couple sides of that. My beliefs are not strong on it. I'm kind of like, how different is if you had an original console and you yourself went in and modded it to somehow increase its RAM and increase its processing power, you'd be pretty pleased with yourself. You'd say, that's pretty awesome. And, look how cool my machine is and doing it. And so they do the work for you. Instead of you having to mod your system, they kind of bring along, okay, here's the extra horsepower so that you can enjoy more things on basically the same form factor. I guess if you're a purist, it's that, but then you have really limited what your experience is going to be. You're not going to get a playable Doom on Super Nintendo, and it's kind of nice, I think, to have a playable Doom on Super Nintendo. So I think it's pretty cool. MadLittlePixel had did a video talking about it. We will include a link to that as well. Visit that after you've downloaded Slapdash and gone to our website and all that stuff. But check that link out too. It's good. It's a good type of thing. But I I think it's great that they do it. Or of course, anytime Doom shows up somewhere else and is in a better shape to play, I think that's always good too. We're definitely Doom fans here, so I thought this is pretty cool to hear about.
Yeah, and of course, for Kelly, it's coming on a colored cartridge. So
There you go, which is key.
yes.
It's been it's
So the
been
original Doom did come on a colored cartridge, which was not super common in the 16-bit era. There were a few Sega games and a few more Super Nintendo games, but not a lot that had different colors. Super Nintendo were typically gray, Genesis were typically black. Doom was on a red cartridge when it came out on Super Nintendo. So this is going to be on, it looks blue to me, but they're calling it gunmetal. Again, the blue is just a mock up that Limited Run posted, so it's not the final actual physical object. They're calling it gunmetal. There is going to be two different options, one that's going to have a cartridge, box, poster, all that good stuff, and then a deluxe version, which is going to have, it looks like a metal faceplate on the cartridge instead of a label. The cartridge also has a blood splatter effect on it. It comes with some certificate of authenticity and some other stuff. But I think the bigger thing, which a couple people have talked about, is this is going to have Rumble Pack support. And that's really interesting because Super Nintendo didn't have Rumble Packs. So, in addition to the game, they are releasing a Doom controller. So, the Doom controller will work with this and presumably with other Super Nintendo games. I'm super excited about this controller too, to be honest with you. It's gonna be expensive pre-order for me because not only am I gonna get the game, I'm definitely getting the controller because I have a Retron and you can use whatever controller you want for whichever system. So I'll be able to use this Doom controller on any game. So I'll be able to, switch over to whatever console, whatever first person shooter and use this Rumble Pack Doom controller on it. So I was pretty excited about that too.
Yeah, pretty cool additional feature. A bit of a head scratcher when I first read about it. I was like, because I was like, Rumble Pack for Super Nintendo, Rumble capabilities. I was like, I'm not sure how that's going to work, but the controller kind of answers that question. So yeah, that'll be pretty cool to see. And of course, the color cartridge. What can you
I mean,
say?
that's real. That's what really seals the deal.
Yep, absolutely. Cool.
So is this a purchase for you? You skip it, listed, buy it?
Yeah, we should definitely skip a list and buy it on this one. I'm gonna be a skipping on it, and it's mostly well, multiple reasons. One, I don't have anything, shockingly enough. I don't have a Retron, so I don't have anything that could play the cartridge to say. And I'm not quite a Doom completionist, so that I have to get it just so I have every version to see. But that's probably, if I ever get into the circumstance where I can kind of go cartridge on Super Nintendo, um, I'll definitely pick this up. But until that skip it list to buy it happens, I'm going to be a skip on it. Sounds like you're going to be what are you going to be?
Oh, it's gonna be buy it. I don't think I'm gonna go with the super fancy deluxe edition because I'm sure it's gonna be like $300 or something. I don't think I need to do that. But a physical cartridge and probably the Doom controller as well, because the controller to me is actually the easier buy because I can use that on multiple games.
Yeah, $300. That's like half an analog pocket.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
you're almost at a Game Boy.
Yeah. Although there are a lot of features on the analog Game Boy that are very impressive, and even though we pick on it, um, we mostly pick on the $500 price point version.
Yeah, it was more the price tag, and we did mention that obviously this is a very high end thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So, in our
it is,
defense,
and it can play other cartridges as well, but then you got to buy something else to make that happen. So, but we did have a one of the folks that watched the show tuned us in or reminded us about there's it's more than just a simple Game Boy, and so credit where credit's due. That's a fair point. So I want to kind of acknowledge that. But it's
absolutely.
still it's still expensive, crazy expensive for
Yeah, I
the
think for our interests here, it's
yeah,
fair to say
a
that I
little
don't
rich
think
for our
that
blood.
is a consideration for either one of us.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna skip it. Mike's a buy it on this. Let us know in the comments where you're at on it, and where where you'd like to see them go next. Super or just an NES version of Doom. Be kind of interesting to see.
I'm really hoping this opens up the door to a reissue of the 32X with all the fan patches that have come out
Oh yeah,
to add the missing content back in. I would love that.
yeah. Because there's some of the fan patches that are out there really um, clean that up and bring it up to a pretty impressive level. So that's something to hope for. Cool.
Bog Panda.